Welcome to Real Estate Investing for Women. On this show, you will learn how to create wealth through real estate the blissful way. That means with very little stress and very little time. We talk about strategies, mindset, heart set, money smarts, resources, and so much more to ensure you're able to create the success you most deeply desire. Now, here's your host, Moneeka Sawyer.
Today, I am so excited to welcome to the show Whitney Elkins-Hutten. She is the Director of Investor Education at PassiveInvesting.com and a partner in $700 million in real estate, including over 6,300 plus residential units and more than 1,400 plus storage units across 8 states. And experienced flipping over $4 million in residential real estate. Okay, ladies, so I didn't fix that bio, but wow, that's an awful lot of real estate, Whitney. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So nice
Glad to be here.
Yeah, Whitney is one of these patient, beautiful people we've had to reschedule several times. And so I'm just super appreciate that you are even here. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, I've had to reschedule myself lately.
It's so good. Okay. So Whitney, could you give us kind of the high end version of your story? Like, why are you in real estate? How did you start? Give us kind of like the short and dirty version.
Well, I'll try. Try to keep it short. But I started off in real estate investing in 2002, completely by accident. I started as an accidental landlord. I had bought a house with a significant other, and about a month later, the relationship fell apart, and the house was in my name. The bills were, everything was in my name, and I was terrified. I was like, what am I going to do? And so I was young, didn't have a family at the time. So I stuffed the house full of roommates, and the house also needed a huge rehab. There were psychedelic flowers painted all over the walls from the 1960s that had never been taken down. Poor layout, you name it, green shag carpet. Covering up beautiful hardwood floors. And so I actually, my roommates didn't mind living in the construction zone. As a matter of fact, I paid them a lot in beer and pizza and sushi. And anyways, we turned that house around in about 11 months. And when I sold it, and that was probably my number one investing mistake, because I didn't realize about the power of real estate at that particular time. I actually had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and got it all wrong. So I had to go back to school. But what I did realize when I sold that property is I made more in 11 months than I did in my day job, working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week in public health and traveling all the time. And I hadn't been paying for my housing at all because my roommates had supported a majority of the bills, with rent. And I was like, how many more times can I do this? So that term now is called live-in flipping. So I did a few more projects by myself, and then my husband eventually joined me. Not all the projects went extremely well. Maybe some people here have heard of the story where the bus fell into the roof of one of my properties. Yes, that did happen.
Oh my goodness.
But long story short, and most people are like, how does a bus fall on the roof? But yeah, on a mountainside, and it will happen there. But long story, fast forward 10 years, I found myself not able to leave my day job. I didn't have any more financial independence than I had started with. I had buckets of equity, but I couldn't pay my day-to-day bills consistently with that type of income. And then it dawned on me, a friend of mine mentioned to me one day, like, why don't you keep those properties and put a renter in them? Let that land. I'm like, oh, great. So I scaled to about 30 properties in about a year and a half, single family properties, in state and out of state. And then I had another problem, is that I was able to step away from my day job to be at home with my family and our young daughter. My husband couldn't, because we couldn't pick up properties fast enough. And so we had hit another ceiling achievement and had to learn how to scale through larger multifamily property. And we did it both actively and passively. And, I quickly learned that I'm more geared towards the passive side of investing. And that kind of brings me to where I'm at today. Is I'm still a partner in all that real estate that you just named. However, one of my favorite investment vehicles is how to get into passive real estate, multifamily, self-storage, car washes, hotels, even real estate debt. And, really that's what's been able to afford my husband and I to have, the five freedoms in life: freedom of income, freedom of choice, freedom of independence, or location independence, freedom of impact. And, that's what I get to do here every single day at passiveinvesting.com as the director of investor education, is help people realize those goals, same goals for themselves, albeit in a much shorter timeline than the journey I took.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you did read Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's what the book that seems to start a lot of people on investing, but you're still like, oh, I think I'll just get rid of this one. And I have to tell you, like, I made a similar mistake. I hadn't read Rich Dad Poor Dad at the time because it wasn't out. That's how old I am. But but I sold my first piece of real estate too. And I was like years later, I was like, what was I thinking? We bought it for 200,000. It is now worth 1.75 million. I'm like, ow. But that's the way things go,
Yeah. It was really the second book for me in Cash Flow Quadrant. And I know Robert Kiyosaki goes over the cash flow quadrant in Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I just wasn't in the space to really absorb what he was trying to say there. I knew I had landed on something with real estate, but I don't know. I was still had this mental thought that I have to put in all the work. That's the only way that I can be rewarded. I personally have to provide all the value. And that's not necessarily the case. It was more about how can you, shift your income from, trading time for money into, either building your own business or investing, learning how to invest in other people's businesses. And, it was about 10 years after that, when I hit that first kind of inflection point, when we decided to start holding on to some of these properties that we were flipping, I read that book. Now, I mean, it was a slap in the head. I mean, tons of bricks came crashing down because how many flips had I done before then that we hadn't held on to? And I'm like, oh, that would have been amazing if I could have caught them all, kept them all, because we were buying with, low down payment. We had low interest rates. We were able to use, 203K loans for construction because we were living in the property. We were using, the 121 exclusion, which is kind of like the 1031 exchange for real estate investors to keep our capital gains tax free. But how powerful would that have been if I was able to keep all of those?
Yeah. Exactly. I totally agree. I love this conversation, Whitney, as we're starting together, because I would really like this to, as you say, land with people. I think that so much of the time, people that are listening to this show understand real estate. They understand, well, to a degree, right? Leverage, that sort of thing. But I think it is really hard to switch from the mindset of trading time for money to just having your money work for you passively. So you work on the front end, but then you let it work for you after. It's kind of like, in a way, like hiring an employee, that employee that you don't have to really manage, right? But so there's a lot of people that have W-2 jobs that have a hard time making that switch. And it's interesting that you mentioned that even as a flipper, you were in real estate and still had trouble making that mental switch, right? And I will say that for me, I have a lot of property where I have tenants in them. They're mostly passive. We know that as a landlord, if you're managing your own property, it's mostly passive, not completely passive. But I make a lot of rent and a lot of appreciation on those properties with doing very, very little work. So there's not a relatively the changing time, trading time for money is very low, right? My ROI is huge for the time that I spend. But now I personally am trying to move to fully passive. And it's even hard for me to go there because once you're used to being in a way of doing things, right, it's hard to go to that next level. So I wanted to say that so that the ladies that are listening can hear that if you're having trouble fathoming this, if you're having trouble taking that next step, understand that all of us, from the people at the very beginning to the people that have reached great heights in real estate, we do have trouble making paradigm shifts like that when we're going to the next level. And sometimes we need to hear that it's okay. You're not alone. We all do this, but it is necessary to make that paradigm shift in order to get there. Right. Wouldn't you agree with me on that, Whitney?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's, for me, you talk about paradigm shifts, but for me, it was my identity, right? So the initial shift of, being able to just step into real estate and allow it to work for me, shifting my active income from my public health job into, being a real estate professional. I spent how many years in school? Years in training, studying for board exams and all that. And then here I'm, if I know that if I really want to have true financial independence, I have to let that go. I have to let that side of me go. And it's not that I will never do public health ever again. It's just that I'm not a public health professional. I'm a real estate investor. And then, but I'm an active real estate investor. I was using property management for, I still do. I have a lot of property, controlled property that I personally own. And, I use property management, but as I started unwinding some of that portfolio and shifting it into truly passive investments, passive with your time and passive with your income, that was another identity shift. I mean, those core 30, single family properties, my babies, I had trouble like letting those go because I was like, I'm a single family investor. Like that's what I do. But I knew if I needed to go to the next level, that that part of me, I needed to shift my identity yet again to just being a real estate investor. And, you get to create more impact in the world too, whenever you do that. For me, those 30 single family properties, and at one point in time, we were up to like 52 between Indianapolis and Kansas City. I mean, if you think about it, from how I was paying my real estate taxes, I'm only impacting 2 areas, 52 households. Now I'm across 8 states, multiple cities in those areas. The taxes that I pay in those areas, the thousands of families that we're able to impact, it's a greater impact that I'm able to create. But it is kind of like the Marie Kondo, right? Like you got to give that old you a little hug and then step into the new you to realize that full potential.
Yeah. It is interesting because we're evolving beings, and we have so much potential to evolve as human beings, but then also financially in our impact in the world and those sorts of things. And you're right, every single time we step into that new identity, it's a complete transformation, right? And what also can happen for a lot of people is this sort of imposter syndrome, right? Like, I don't belong here, right? I got all those degrees, that's where I belong, or whatever it is. I've been doing this for 40 years. This is where I belong. The thing is that nobody defines where you belong except you, right? And you're only, and I have often said, even about imposter syndrome, that if you're not feeling it, you're not going big enough. You're not pushing yourself to that next level. Because when you push yourself to that next level is where you start to feel that doubt, but you'll get there. You did it the first time too, right? To become the identity that you are now, you pushed, right? For you did this education, you did all these really hard things to become that person, right? So just, ladies, I just want you to hear this, that maybe it's time for that identity shift so that you can go to that next level. So talk to me a little bit, Whitney, about goals. You have 5 different kinds of goals that you look at in life, and 5 areas of financial freedom. So talk to me a little bit about your perspective on goals. Not financial freedom, but 5 kinds of freedoms, right?
Oh, well, yeah. So and these aren't my concepts that I've created. These are things that, I'm a student of history. My dad was a history major, and I rebelled against every museum he ever took me to. It wasn't until he took me to Custer's Last Stand in Montana, that I was just like, oh, I need to get this. Like, I need to like start studying like, the past and studying these great, people so we can learn, right? And the reason it's not because, we will never make mistakes ever again, is so we can collapse time and get through those obstacles and mistakes faster. So I know that was like a little bit of a tangent, but, stick with me here. Because when I started hating those first levels of achievement, even with that first house, I'm like, okay, the first house went swimmingly well. The second house, I did everything wrong. Like what was happening? I essentially repeated the exact same thing, but here I barely broke even. My neighbor's tenant who was living in a bus fell into the roof of the property the day after it sold. He's pulling a shotgun on the police. I'm like, what? Okay, I went off the rails somewhere. And it was because I was just like, I hadn't really taken to heart the lessons that I could have been learning. I don't have to learn them all myself. I can learn from other people. So that's where we kind of like, long story short, it was like success leaves clues. That's one of the quotes that I love by Tony Robbins. Like, who can I learn from, and start piling all these different pieces together. And when I heard about the 5 freedoms in life, I was just like, oh, that's it. Because, when people said I'm pursuing financial freedom or financial independence, I'm like, that's one, but there's something else there for me to pursue. And, it can't all be about money. And then it was, I landed on choice and time. Great. But there's still something else there for me to pursue. And then when I heard, about the freedom, of location and independence, but more importantly, the freedom to create an impact, it was like, yes, that's it. Like that is for me what I'm after. And, every time that you talk with an investor, you talk with a client, and you really start to uncover what they're trying to achieve in life, it's going to boil down to one or multiple of those freedoms. Now, that's cool. Like that's step one. What do you want? Like, which of these freedoms are you truly going to go after? But then step 2 isn't about like, re-engineering the math behind how to hit that freedom. I think this is where a lot of people really sell themselves short. Is they're like, okay, great. If I want to have financial freedom, I want to have time freedom, I want to be location independent, I need $10,000 a month, and I need 20 houses or whatever to go hit $10,000 a month. That's not actually the question you should be asking yourself. It's, you need to understand, how do you want to feel when you hit whatever X goal is, financial independence, freedom of choice, whatever. Like, how do you want to feel? Because you'll always move the goalpost on the number of the houses and the amount of income that you want to create. And that's how people go through life unfulfilled, is they continue to move the goalposts. We all do it. But it's whenever they can define how they want to feel, that's when you understand what enough is, what fulfillment is. And you can always do more, right? Or there will always be, pressure to do more, but you really have to understand for yourself, how do you want to feel whenever you do attain your goal? And I think, understanding what do you want, why do you want it? And then we can start re-engineering okay, great. What kind of mindsets, what kind of skills do you need to acquire? Who do you need to have in your world? Does it have to be you that does things, or can you hire it out and even like shorten your path even further? But those are really kind of the 3 centering questions that I challenge anybody when they're working through their goals.
Got it. So now as we decide on a goal, or we sort of land on a goal, we need to, for this conversation, decide on strategies that are going to help us to get there, right? So how do you recommend people do that?
Yeah, so that would be kind of like in that 3rd question, like, who do I need to become in order to achieve this goal? Do I need to let go of an identity? Do I need to shift my mindset? What do I need to embody to be a real estate investor that's bringing in 10,000K a month? I have to probably like break those, initial identity around like being an employee who's told what to do. I've got to now switch into an entrepreneurial mindset. So, really thinking through like, what are those mindset changes that somebody needs to make? And then, two, okay, once I've made these mindset changes, and this process can take just like a couple hours in the afternoon to really think through. I'm going to pretend that I am this entrepreneur that's bringing in $10,000 a month. Fantastic. What kind of skills does that person need to have? They probably need to have like some sort of financial skills, goal setting skills, but they probably need to have some sort of team building skills, relationship building skills, negotiation skills, some sort of way of, processes around tracking progress and, continually checking in with themselves, not once a year, not every 2 months or 6 months, not quarterly, like weekly, daily, right? And then who do you need to have in your world in order to make this happen? When we're first starting out, we're probably the ones that are wearing all these hats as the operator of our business. But I encourage people to actually think future state, like in a year, 5 years, elevate yourself to CEO quickly, which means you shouldn't be the one, posting on social media. You shouldn't be the ones like sending out like networking emails. You might have to do that at the very beginning, but quickly let go of that and start bringing people into your world to help you out with these things. Also, think about how you're using your time. I take people through a wonderful exercise on time management, and it's really, helping them color code their time and realize putting dollar amounts to their activities they're doing in their day. And the shift in thought can be overnight and, very impactful when you realize that you're doing a lot of things that are actually robbing you of money as well, as opposed to, giving you wealth, not only like financial wealth, but just like personal wealth, health wealth, stuff like that.
Got it.
I can go on forever about this, but I'm sure we got more questions we want to tackle.
No, I love that. I love that. I'm super curious about sort of the color coding your time blocking to see where you're losing your time.
Yeah, so we can touch on that really fast if we want to.
I would love that. Could you share with us?
Yeah. So I would encourage, if people are listening, go and look at your calendar and write everything down. Maybe you're doing this retrospectively from last week. It's kind of like doing a food diary, right? Nobody wants to really write down, hey, I had a Snickers bar or I drank a Coca-Cola, like especially if they're trying to lose weight. But do that, write everything down. How much time you spend on social media or watching TV or doing all these things that you may not need to do in order to be successful. But once you have it all written down, now, this is about getting real with yourself. You're going to go through anything that you're getting paid $0 an hour to do, and you're going to color code it brown. Now, this might be mowing the lawn, washing dishes, doing laundry, right? I'm not going to totally beat up TV or social media or anything like that. The next thing to do is to go through and do any of those kind of administrative tasks that you have to get done. They are related to your business, but really there's really no exchange for money. Maybe it keeps the lights on. Maybe, you would pay somebody 10 or 15, 20 hours to do. Color code those in light green. And then there's going to be those activities whenever you kind of step it up. They're going to be maybe like networking events or meetings that only really you can do. But if you train the right person to do it, they can do. Those are going to be, and maybe those type of activities yield you $100 to $1,000 an hour. Color code those in bright green, like the brightest green you possibly can. And then you're going to go through and any of those activities that only you can do, that you love doing, that only you can do and you love doing, and that yield you $2,000 or more an hour, color code those gold. Also, color code those if your goal is to spend more time with family or spend more time on your health. Okay, those things are priceless as well. Color code those things gold. Now, the first time somebody does this, they're going to realize that their calendar looks like a pile of poop. It's a lot of brown.
Yeah.
But now we've given a context of where you're spending your time. So what do we do now? We try to reduce or eliminate or outsource as much as we possibly can the brown things. So it's cut what you can, okay, get it all gone, okay. And, it's hard. It's kind of like going on a diet. Those things tend to creep back in. Automate whatever you can. All right. And then outsource. Like, do you have to be the one to mow the lawn? Do you have to be the one to do the laundry? Like my daughter's 10. Like right now we're outsourcing to her some of these things so she can provide value in the household. This is my first year. I love gardening, but I know I don't need to be doing the shutting down the garden for the winter. I have somebody coming tomorrow who's spending all day doing the gardening. But I get to tinker around with my like little herbs. And then, the light green things, that's going to be your first VA, your virtual assistant that you're going to hire. They're going to take on all those kind of low level tasks. And for not that much, maybe you pay them $10 an hour or $15 an hour. But they're going to get it done so much faster than you can because that is their primary job. And then as you start scaling your real estate business, you're going to start, maybe bringing in more people or partners to help share the load on those bright green tasks. And what that does, it's going to open up more time for you to bring in those yellow tasks, right? Those conferences that you should be going to network, the deal funding activities that you need to be doing to, scale your portfolio, spending time on your health, your family, relationships with others. Now we're starting to open up time. When people say I don't have time, that's really it's a clue that tells me that they just haven't done this inventory to really understand how they're spending their time.
I love that. And then on the other side of that, right, when you free up a lot of your time, right, then when you say I don't have time, it's more about examining, is that because this is something you really don't want to be doing? Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you can take it on both sides of that, right? Like the front end, you clear up a lot of that time. If you're still feeling like I don't have time, now it's okay, well, is it because you do have time now for the things that are important to you? So are those other things not important to you? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Or if they're not in alignment with the goal,
Right.
I sit down with my family. We sit down once a quarter and we do what we call a dream session. What are the things that we want to learn, experience, and how do we want to give back? I mean, those
Mhm.
are really the three key areas for happiness. And there are so many things that I want to learn. Language and play chess and I mean, I have like 50 things written in those categories, but there's really, I don't have time to do it all.
Mhm.
Right. So I have to, you continue still to have to make choices.
Mhm.
And the things that if you can't make time to get whatever X is, does it align with your goals and how bad do you want it? Right.
Mhm.
And now we're centered back to those three questions. What do you want and why do you want it? Sometimes you have to purge. Every year I purge a lot of the activities that I thought would be really cool to do. But like, really, they're not. Like, I don't really want this. So
I love that. Thank you for that. That was super awesome. I'm going to try that. I love the visual of the colors.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. So talk to me about real estate syndications, how to kind of evaluate syndicators, operators, markets, and all of that stuff.
Oh my gosh. So I have a whole process. I have boot camps, people can reach out to me, if this little like 10-minute primer
Yeah.
doesn't work for them, because it is really truly a process. I think the first thing to understand is syndication means group investing. I think a lot of people, initially are like, I don't understand what a syndication is. It sounds like the mafia, right?
Yes,
Like
it does.
a syndicate.
Totally.
But it's not. Syndicate really, comes from, the Latin root as group, right? So how, as a group, can we take down a larger asset? And we split that group further down into limited partners and general partners. General partners are the ones that are going to be the day-to-day operators and actually run the business. They're going to be sourcing the deal, underwriting the deal, acquiring the deal, raising capital, figuring out credit and lending. They got all the brokers, the lenders. They can get other investor capital pulled together. So that's their core business. The limited partner's job is to do three things: vet the operator, vet the market, vet the deal. And that's it. And once they write that check, they're essentially, they still have other jobs. They need to stay there because they're in partnership. They still need to, read the communication, ask questions, and be respondent to any needs that the general partner has of them. But largely their day-to-day operations role is non-existent. They're done. So this is a great way for somebody who's like a high net worth individual, somebody who's ready to transition from having their own controlled portfolio. I say they're ready to fire Home Depot and their property manager and get their time back. These are great. This is a great avenue, or it can just even be a complement to somebody's portfolio. Maybe somebody really loves doing, this specific niche part of controlled real estate, but they want to have exposure to multifamily and self-storage and car washes and hotels, but they shouldn't, and they can't go learn it all and be the expert in everything. So they can invest with experts. Now, so that's what syndication is. So the first rule, and I think the first question in this process is, do you love real estate? Because if you can't check that box, this isn't for you. Now, or do you believe in real estate? Maybe that's a better question. And I think a lot of people here actually do believe in real estate already. And then
I agree with you.
We can check that box.
Yeah.
And then the next question is like, what are your goals, right? Do you need cash flow? Do you need tax benefits? Do you need equity? Do you need diversification? What are your goals? And I have a whole ebook that walks people through this exact process. And then you need to understand your risk. Okay. Do you want a Class A asset? No CapEx, no maintenance. Do you want, a more kind of value add core plus asset where there's, maybe a little bit of CapEx, deferred maintenance to work on, but you get maybe a deeper discount on the property? Or are you like swinging for the fences and you want a development deal or a heavy value add opportunistic deal? And there's different reward profiles and risk profiles for all these different types of assets I just named. But you have to understand what fits best for you and for your portfolio. Now that's all the groundwork. But you have to do that groundwork first, and it doesn't have to take long. Like I walk people through a process that takes them like an hour to get all these questions figured out for themselves. Then now is the time to go look for operators, and we're looking for high quality operators. One of my favorite ways to find operators is going to conferences where these operators are at, or meetups or something like that. But you can do just a simple Google search if you would like. But they're gonna, you got to get really good at discerning great marketing versus a great operator. And so always get on the phone with the operator before you ever write a check. This is one of the number one investing mistakes I see limited partners do, is that they love the operator. Maybe they've heard about them through a friend, but they don't get on the phone with them themselves to fully understand if this is the right person for them to be in partnership with. And we're trying to figure out, like, are they genuine? Are they authentic? Are they transparent? Do they have a background in real estate? Do they have a background in business? What is their track record? What is kind of exits have they currently produced for their limited partners? What are their biggest challenges have been? Okay, we just went through COVID pandemic. We're butted right up against heavy inflation and a recession. We've had all sorts of weather related issues in the past couple of years. There has to be some sort of challenge that's cropped up. I'm not looking for an operator that has had zero challenges. Okay, I'm actually probably more attuned to invest with an operator that's had challenges and overcame it well, than versus somebody who's never had a challenge. Because what you're doing when you go into passive investing, this goes back to that identity shift. You're no longer the day-to-day operator on a deal. You're now investing, according to Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, you're now getting on that self-employment category and shifting into that I investor category, which is where true financial freedom and time freedom is found. And so, which means you have to get really good at vetting operators. And the other mistake I see limited partners make is that they get starry-eyed by returns on deals I can put any number down on a piece of paper, guys, and I can show it to you, but it's the operator is the one that has to deliver. So you're investing in people primarily with this type of strategy. Whereas before, you were the strategy, you were the person, right? So essentially, again, this is leveling up, becoming the CEO and backfilling with a director of operations or a COO in order to help build and scale your investment business. So again, there's a wealth of questions that, you can ask an operator here, but that just gives you kind of like a high level, like little, primer on that. But then you want to understand what markets they're in. And I really encourage people when you're moving into passive investments to be in markets where a lot of investing cards are stacked in your favor. And I mean, I like metropolitan service areas, maybe in the primary area or the secondary area, or maybe like 35, 40 miles of the city center, because there's a lot of infrastructure there. There's going to be a lot of money put into these areas. And certain areas are scaling to there. They're becoming like a tertiary market, and they're scaling to a secondary market. So you can find those areas to be in path of progress. But we're looking for areas where the population's growing, income's growing, jobs are growing, jobs are diversified, crime's coming down, poverty's coming down. We're also looking for areas that have good landlord-tenant laws, especially if you're going to multifamily, but certainly good tax laws, because taxes are one of your number one expenses on any real estate asset. And so if we can be in those pro-business areas, that's even probably a feather in a cap for an investment. And there's tons of other questions there. There's tons of other resources that I can share with people on how to suss out good markets. But then we get down to the deal. And the deal, a lot of people are like, show me the returns, show me the money. That's not where we should start, right? We need to double check that deal for, does it match our goals? Where do we want to be invested? How do we want to be invested? Cash flow, equity, tax benefits, diversification. Is it in the markets that we want to be in? Okay. Then we can start getting into the business fundamentals of the deal. Does it have the risk profile that we want to be exposed to? Does it have the time horizon that we want to be exposed to? Does it have the distribution schedule that actually works best for our finances? Monthly, quarterly, annually. And then we can start getting into the return profiles on the asset. And there's a wealth of other things that people need to do to complete actual true due diligence on when they look at a deal. But those are some high level screening type questions to really help somebody, get jump started into passive investing, but also when they look at an initial deal to understand in just like a few minutes whether that deal will work for them.
Love that. And all of that covered in the book that you're going to be giving my
Yes.
ladies? Awesome. Okay, perfect.
And more.
She's all, and more. Yay. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that book? So ladies, Whitney has been super, super generous. She's giving you an digital copy of her book. So tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, it's called the Passive Investor Playbook. Is really the ultimate guide for hands-off investing, and it's a free ebook. You can go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com. It's a subpage on the passiveinvesting.com website, but be sure to go to passiveinvestingwithwhitney.com because that's the only place that you can actually get this ebook. I also, once you read it, I also put together a short checklist for people. That way they can just have that short checklist and kind of do a quick screening on a deal. In the future, once they kind of learn these general principles. And then there is opportunity to schedule time with me and we can just talk about all things real estate. I love it.
I love that. And thank you so much for the generosity of sharing that.
My pleasure.
Yay. This has been really, really good. We kind of went a little bit off topic of what we were originally planning on talking about, but I feel, Whitney, like you've just offered such valuable information to my ladies. I super appreciate that.
My pleasure. Yes.
Yay. So ladies, one of the things I asked Whitney to talk to us about in extra is car wash deals. This is something that nobody has talked about on this show. And I'm super intrigued about it. So, we're going to talk about investing in car washes and kind of what that looks like. And so, stay tuned for extra to hear more about that. And before we go into extra, let's do our 3 rapid fire questions. Whitney, are you ready?
I think so.
Okay, good.
I'm ready.
That was funny.
I can think fast on my feet.
So tell us one super tip on getting started investing in real estate.
I think the super tip is going back to understanding those 3 questions, right? Like, what do you want? Why do you want it? And then who do you need to become to get it? And when you answer that 3rd question, it's mindset, skills, and networks. That's really what you're digging into. And those questions are going to, and it's not a one and done deal. Continue to ask those questions. If you're just getting into real estate, do it once a quarter, right? And once you kind of get really solid in your plan, maybe do it every 6 months, and then eventually, maybe you just do that as kind of an annual ritual. But because it's going to take you a time to really land on what you truly want. But 2, your wants are going to change as you move those goalposts down.
Yes.
So, really, those are the 3 centering questions. I know my family, we do that, still once a quarter, just to kind of double check, that, we're flying the right path, right? Like if you're flying from LA to New York, majority of the planes are always off course, but if you can continue to do small course corrections, you're going to eventually get to your destination.
I love that. And then what is one strategy to be successful as a real estate investor?
Understanding very quickly that it's a who, not how game. And that can be from, delegating, offloading, automating, all that sort of stuff, right? But also just the relationship building, and that you don't need to do this in a vacuum alone. And so many of the people that I work with personally, that is a really hard challenge. We're brought up as employees to do your work, right? Even in school, do your work, stay at your desk, don't look at the other person, work, right? Like, no, that's not how real estate goes. And the quicker that you can understand that it's a community, it's a team, and majority of the people are working together to get deals done, you're going to scale fast.
I love that. Thank you for that. And thank you for saying it in exactly that way. I love that. And then what is one thing that you do daily, Whitney, that you would say contributes to your personal success?
Ooh, for me, it's putting my oxygen mask on first. And so I get out of bed. I mean, I have a kid, I have a dog, I have a husband, and the first couple of hours of my day are just all focused on me, and getting my top priorities done, and my priorities around my health, my relationships, and then also just like, what is that first goal that I need to do and tackle getting those things done. And then, I sound like the Army. What is it? The Army commercial? Like, we get more done by 10 a.m. than most people do in a day. I mean, that's pretty much like, what I do. But I think it's putting my oxygen mask on first, getting those, eating the frog, getting those things done, moving those chess pieces early on in the day. Because, by 10 a.m., if my day gets derailed, I've already won it.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love that.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking before we got on the show, like my day on Monday got really derailed when we had to take my daughter into the emergency room. She's fine, by the way, guys. But it was, I had already been up for a couple hours, and it was like, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing this. And it didn't set me that far back because I'd already moved a lot of those chess pieces pretty early in the day.
Yeah, that was great advice. Thank you for everything you've offered on this show, Whitney.
My pleasure.
Yay. And we've got more, ladies. We're going to be talking about car washes. I'm so excited. So if you are subscribed to Extra, please stay tuned. If you're not, but would like to be, go to realestateinvestingforwomenextra.com and you can subscribe there. For those of you that are leaving Whitney and me now, thank you so much for joining us for this portion of the show. I super appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you next time. And until then, remember, Goals without action are just dreams. So get out there, take action, and create the life your heart deeply desires. I'll see you soon. Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to find out more about how to become a blissful millionaire, go to blissfulinvestor.com. See you next time.